We got one more panel. This is a panel of amazing experts in the field that I am not an expert in at all. So I'm super excited to meet all of you and also to introduce you. So I'm going to do that right now. The first is Kathy Waller. And Kathy is a trailblazing executive leader for more than 3 decades, who's currently the executive director for the Atlanta Committee for Progress and a board member at Delta Airlines, Beyond Meat, and Spelman College. That's a broad array of things. The first female and first black CFO of a Fortune 100 company, where she served at Coca-Cola as the chief financial officer. And she retired from Coke in March of 2019 after 32 years of an extraordinary career with the company, leading a whole bunch of M&A and investor activities and other initiatives. She's been the recipient of various prestigious awards in finance and was recently inducted into the JA Atlanta Business Hall of Fame. So this is Kathy. Karenann Terrell, who I had the pleasure of having salad with tonight. Karenann, or Kat as she's known, has been a driver of transformation for enterprises at scale through technology for her entire operating career. She's now a board member of various companies such as UiPath, as well as executive advisory board member of Insight Partners and Google. She's been a transformation leader across multiple industries, ranging from having been the chief digital and information officer in pharma at GlaxoSmithKline and Baxter, to retail at Walmart, and automotive at Mercedes and Chrysler. Karenann has led the charge in bringing technology transformation to businesses and continues to do so here in the age of AI. Then we have, thank you, welcome. Then we have our token male on the Erwin Rambourg. Erwin has been a top-ranked analyst covering the luxury and sporting goods sectors for 18 years. And after 8 years as a marketing manager in the luxury industry, notably for LVMH and Richemont, he's now a managing director and global head of consumer and retail equity research. He regularly contributes to the Wall Street Journal, the Financial Times, CNBC, and Bloomberg, and has guest lectured at top universities in the US, Europe, and Asia. And he's an author. His most recent book is Future Lux, maybe? Lux?
However you want to pronounce it.
What's ahead for the business of luxury? So welcome, everyone. And finally, our moderator is Kimberly Chin. She's a retail journalist at Axios. She co-authors Axios Pro Retail Deals, a newsletter covering finance and investing in the consumer and retail space. And she was previously a corporate breaking news reporter at the Wall Street Journal. She helped launch Wall Street Journal Pro's Sustainable Business newsletter. Thank you, and welcome, Kimberly. I'm going to leave it to you, Kimberly.
Yes, thank you.
Take it away.
All right, excellent. Well, we have a lot to cover, and we have exciting guests here. And thank you, everyone, for joining us. Karenann, I'd like to start off with you. You were CIO with Walmart between 2010 and 2017. We can go back in time a little bit. We're a big box retailer hat. What would you say are the tech priorities for a big box retailer? How does AI fit into that?
I think when you think of big box, margins is an incredibly important component. And so operational excellence and the use of technology to actually drive down systematically the cost of supply chain, merchandising, store operations is a primary priority for all technology. Whether AI is going to sweeten that or not, I think that's critically important. And I think increasingly big box has got, I don't like the word personally omni-channel to talk about that, but increasingly retail. And I love the question to Nazrin, which is, do you need Walmart as a customer? There's $7 trillion in the United States of retail sales last year. And I think Walmart was about $350 million of it. That was big, but still pretty small on the whole scale. So I think when you think of a big box, they are trying to figure out how to get their customers wherever they want to shop, in the store, online and pick up in the store, or online and delivered to the door. I think that they're trying to look across all of that, and that's a unification of the use of data and how data is going to drive decision making. no, that has always been a big deal. It is never more important than in the age of AI. There's not a lot of big box retailers and retailers that I would say are outside of kind of the top tier that have finished that journey. There is a huge importance for there to be a river of consistency of data and the taxonomy of data if you're going to do anything with AI, and I think that's there. And then the last one, I always just shove it in there because everybody just, doesn't pay attention to it, is cybersecurity and technology driving cybersecurity is a massively important issue from a retailer point of view, because when a retailer is going to know you personally, you do not want your data and your information about anything that has to do with payment details or personally identifiable information in the hands of a big box that's, basically blocking and tackling just on their security. You want somebody who knows you and knows to keep your information safe. And so I think that side by side with the kind of omni-retailing and the experience there and efficiency, that's priorities were like that 10 years ago, they are like that today, and I believe they'll be like that in 10 years.
Kathy, I was wondering if you can speak to it, I guess putting on the kind of consumer brand hat on, what are the tech priorities for consumer brands, and again, how does AI fit into that?
Of course, for any consumer brand, the most important thing to understand is your consumer. So the more that, and most of our consumer brands have lots of data. We haven't necessarily done a lot with all of our data. We have systems that are generally not old, that are old and not well suited for being able to read the data in a way that really helps us. And so the opportunity now is significant, and AI coming in, helping us understand that data better and helping us make decisions about our consumers. Right? So that is the opportunity. The issue becomes, how do you do that in a cost-effective way that is going to then actually give you the data that you need and not give you the wrong answers, right? Which is what a lot of people are also getting. So I think for brands who need to understand their consumers, the opportunity is significant right now. And we always thought we'd like at Coca-Cola, thought we did a good job with that. Is there an opportunity to be even better at that? To pinpoint that a little bit better? To personalize things for consumers? That's the opportunity now, but you've got to be able to figure out how to do it and do it well.
Naruman, you kind of look at a different kind of consumer, a different kind of segment of consumer, and we were discussing how luxury has been a bit behind when it comes to, tech adoption. So I'm curious to you how, if you can again put that luxury retailer hat on, what their kind of priorities are, how they're looking at tech and AI.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me as the token male. I'm very honored. I had a phone call from Nasrin to say, can you come in and talk about luxury and AI? And I said, no, I know nothing, next to nothing about AI. And she said, well, that in itself is quite telling, because I've been involved in luxury for the past 25 years, and I don't hear a lot of managers in the luxury space telling me about AI, and I tried to understand why. And I think one of the reasons why is that, as Bernard Arnault, the CEO of LVMH, would say, margins are a consequence, not a target. The target of many of these brands is to basically enhance brand equity and desirability, and essentially focus on building that brand equity, that desirability, those market shares, and eventually margins will follow. And a lot of the reading I've been doing on AI and brands is around productivity, cost cutting. Cost cutting is not a term that's used much in luxury. Cost containment, maybe sometimes in tough times, but very rarely. So I think the priority of a lot of the companies that I cover are away from productivity and margin enhancement because their margins are already too high. And the other reason I think there's been a bit of a disconnect is linked to the fact that this is not a recurring purchase. If you're buying at Cartier or other luxury brands, it might be the purchase of a lifetime, or twice or three times in a lifetime. There's not this sort of recurrence. And so that's why I think technology needs to serve a human relationship. You cannot have a substitute. And I think we saw it during COVID, when people were basically stuck at home, selling over Zoom or phone calls, etc. Made actually people humanly a lot closer, even though we were physically separated. And I don't know if luxury is late or if just AI is not that adapted to consumer-facing elements within luxury. It might be adapted to more, back office or inventory management or helping designers, helping creativity. But any consumer-facing element, there will be a limit because, again, you're paying a certain price, and so you want to have a face-to-face relationship. And so substituting that human interaction is not a possibility for a lot of the brands that I look at.
I mean, what's interesting about that is that luxury is so high touch. And if anything, they are really at the forefront of kind of bringing that personalization and that tailoring. Kathy, you kind of mentioned how that's important to understanding your consumer. So I'm wondering, and this is kind of to all of you, whether or not there's kind of a missed opportunity in not being able to, use AI or use technology to be able to personalize. I guess I'll ask you first since we were discussing.
I think there are a lot of possible applications. If I'm a Vuitton or a Gucci or another brand that has an element of ready to wear, I can look at your closet, and your purchasing patterns, and I can certainly come up with ideas of what you should be purchasing next, because I know that your son was born in February and his favorite color is blue, and you bought this or that dress, or I have a product launch, and I can feed that this will go with what you have already in your closet. So that's clearly, I think, an opportunity. But again, the interaction will have to be fed and curated by a human being who will have access to that level of detail. Another element for me is around, again, inventory management, and the idea that, in my view, and I'm a sort of arrogant French, which is sort of repeating twice the same thing. The idea of proper luxury brands is and again, I live in the US, so I understand this, but outlets are a no-no for premium European luxury brands, right? And so inventory management for premium European luxury brands needs to be very tight, because in most markets you're not allowed to destroy goods. And so the idea of thinking your production ahead to basically engineer scarcity rather than engineering an overflow of production that you then have to discount or destroy or put in outlets or do friend and family sale with, et cetera, et cetera. I think AI has a role there to play in terms of being very, very tight and ensuring that we produce less than we should, in my sense.
Let me give you an example of personalization that I've seen lately, which I'm assuming it has been AI enabled. But I had tried to make a purchase, and they asked me what other brand fits me well, right? So, which I thought was really interesting to ask me about another brand, right? And what do I feel good in? What I look good in? What fits me well? And then them translate that to me, right? Which I thought was really interesting. But that kind of personalization to try to get to know me better, right? Try to get to fit me better based upon the history they don't have with me and the history that they want to have with me, right? To then have me tell them enough that they can then give me a better idea of what would work for me personally. I thought was really interesting. But that's recent technology that has been enabled, right? And it worked well. I mean, the item came, it fit me just like, it was supposed to. It was a different brand. It was a European brand, frankly, and it was a different size for me, and it fit. That I was a little surprised about, but
Yeah, can I just add one interesting thing about AI that I now am starting to hear across industries, not just in retail, is when you think of the retail industry, it's my customer. These are my customers. They buy from me, and I will keep my data resident in all of that. When I was at Walmart, they had this concept of, yes, it is Walmart's customer, but it's also P&G's customer, and it's also Coca-Cola's customer. And so the data became available on all of that. And so it had this very, very valuable and interesting ecosystem of data. So I think what is really interesting in the era of AI is just the same way as when cell phone, that the value of the brand actually sat in the Apple store and the premium brand of the phone. That in fact, they didn't make a market in data, they just flipped the model so that my customer is also your customer. And I think that this is the essence of what AI may actually be going to do in retail, is the really smart ones are starting to think about, I'll take the Motherly example just because you used it. Motherly doesn't sell things, but Motherly wants to make sure that their customers are serviced and that there's a beneath the skin of AI where sales are going to take place. Think of the model today is, I'm going to go do something with my data. I'm going to sell your data. Well, there's a huge, huge backlash from consumers on the availability of selling it. But if all that is being done is that you're being offered a purchase opportunity that doesn't exist in one channel, I think AI is going to start changing that whole thing. And I think consumer brands and retailers, there's going to be an under the skin economy that starts, and I hope that it starts so that from a consent point of view, you don't feel like, how did they know that, about me? On the other hand, I stood outside of a Chanel store, and I was so pissed off that they stood me in line, when if they would just have taken my picture, they'd have known that I should have gone straight into the store and right to the counter. And I'll tell you, it ticked me off so much I don't buy Chanel anymore. Because they stood me in a line because they had somehow said, she's not worthy of that brand experience. So in luxury, it's even more interesting. They just needed to AI me and know, and they have my consent to do it. They just had to look at my face and know, even though she showed up in Las Vegas, she's been buying in New York like crazy. And so I think if the luxury side of things, if I start getting irritated, by those types of facts, it's coming into retail. And so I think this concept of under the skin, that kind of more horizontal element, is one I'm super interested in. It's the reason, probably one of the primary reasons I show up in a forum like this, is that's an interesting concept. I don't know if it's going to work, and I don't know if it's 2024, but it's a real thing.
Certainly, speaking of a missed opportunity.
Yeah, yes, great point.
Can I add something what you said?
Sure, please.
I think as human beings, we all crave intimacy.
Yeah.
That is very much important to all of us.
Yeah.
The industry in retail attends to that. You're just getting personalizing it. The industry that says, this is very sacred to me, my identity, and you make sure there's no hacking. So you get Palo Alto to come and make sure that,
Yeah.
So when you as a business say to the customer, I know you, I do everything for you the right way, and also make it very intimate. So the idea of intimacy is very important. There's not doing anything.
Yeah, it's, I don't know if everybody heard, but it's, we crave as humans to be known. Not in a creepy way,
Yeah.
but in this intimacy to be known. And when you're served in that way, which actually improves your life, it feels good. And when you're served in a creepy way, it's like the uncanny valley. You're just sort of like, oh man, how could they have possibly known that? But
It creates loyalty.
it does. It does. And
Particularly for the high end.
And AI has the ability across multiple engagement areas to, to do that in a way that nobody sold my data. Nobody
And
sold
even-
me.
But that really argues very much for Veronique. Why? It's the small that you were saying, not LLM. You don't need it. You don't need to. I think really the industry is moved, everybody's happy, but they're trying to boil the ocean. I think they're gonna find out that that is not where the real stuff is. 70% of the,
So I mean, a
Hey,
great,
Glenn.
great question is this gonna be big tech and horizontal? And all these cases are gonna be done on top of big tech? And I'm a Google advisor. So this is one of the reasons that's interesting to me, is big tech gonna own this area just like they did cloud? Or is it gonna be a more,
no,
you know.
look at ownership. 70% of our economy is based on people buying retail, individual.
yeah,
And in it's almost equal basis, we have the same thing in business that it really is anything. So that is the interface.
yeah.
That is.
So our business models are like that, sorry,
All right,
we
so
hijacked that.
no worries. Yeah, so I mean, I think we kind of discussed a little bit about why, you know, AI is useful. One of the things I've heard is just how, you know, high tech enables high touch. One thing I wanted to kind of go into is just really how to think about incorporating AI in the organization. And really, I guess my first question, Kathy, I'll kind of hunt this to you. Who should be the owner of AI in consumer retail organizations?
Well, so that's an interesting question that we've been debating quite a bit. It needs an owner in your organizations. If you relegate it to IT, it is just like every other IT production that you've done within your companies. If you let IT do it, it won't be done to your satisfaction as the business. So the business has to own it with the support of IT. And if otherwise, if it's just driven by IT, it will probably be driven in a very efficient way, et cetera, but I'm not sure it'll exactly meet your needs. So for instance, the CFO needs to educate themselves about AI. It needs to look for potential use cases for their organization, and then needs to own for their organization each of the use cases that they bring in. Because otherwise, you're just gonna spend a heck of a lot of money, and you're gonna watch the rest of your organization throw out a heck of a lot of money, and it's not gonna exactly meet your needs. So, yeah, IT is very important, and even those companies that are getting an AI officer or whatever, that could be very important, but the business has to own it, or it's not gonna meet your needs, in my opinion.
I don't agree with that, because I'm in IT. So when the programming language of the newly emergent technology, which is, you know, I forget what Sundar said, the CEO, I think he called it fire. He tried to say that it was like fire.
Right.
When the technology that is ripping through that is the programming language of that is English, right? Because that's the whole thing about prompt engineering and prompting is it is English. There is, by that very nature, a duality of the technology that may never have existed on things like cloud and ERPs and those types of things. And so I was fascinated by, Walmart was at CES, and you can download it and watch it, but they talked about this dual model, and the ownership inside of Walmart is there's an HR leader. I'm like, HR, are you kidding me? What is HR? I'm sorry if anybody here is in HR. But I'm thinking, HR is partnered with the chief technology officer with a business council around it. So there's a business council that's doing it on all that. And it was because things are so, if they want it to rapidly evolve within the organization and to take advantage of that speed, they've got to look at the people centers and actually get them ready for what AI will be. They have to hire differently, they have to train differently, because what I was thinking is, you know, HR is culture and policy and the Department of No. But in fact, it is about, yeah, I told you, IT person, right? Which is, you know, it is, that I thought was a really interesting model, that HR is gonna be there to actually support and lift the organization at the same time that technology is coming on with a business council. And I heard two points of view from the stage at NRF. One was, we have to very carefully prioritize this to a very few things that are gonna be highly impactful, which by the way sounds a lot like the old IT. All you people that can use it and it's gonna have value, we're gonna prioritize only a few things. And then I heard and I'm paraphrasing, hand it out like candy and let people go at it. And put a governance structure around the candy eaters so that things that really do have value will continue to bubble up. And I don't know what the right answer is on all of that, because I think that it very much depends on the culture of the companies that are involved and how they put it together. But for sure, there needs to be a business council where everybody is starting to elevate their game. Merchants need to do it, store operators need to do it, tech people need to do it, because when you actually look at generative AI, it will probably massively rip through software engineering in a way. I mean, people don't really talk about this, but my kid is like 30 years old and he's essentially quitting the software engineering business he's been in for 8 years because he thinks it's not going to exist in 5. Now he's probably off, but he's not off by 20 years. He's going to still be working when it's gone and it's changed. So every single part of the business is going to change.
All right, so I think I got the Golden Globe music cue. So now, if we can, a couple of questions, yeah?
Yeah,
So I'd like to turn it to the audience.
Lively conversation. Now's the time with all these amazing panelists, but amazing people in the audience.
Billy, please.
No, it's not a question, it's just want to volunteer a proposed paradigm change when it comes to the world of luxury. I thought your little video was very interesting with these 2 examples, one in customer in a shop looking for something and asking the system, and the other one was more customer service operation where this happened between the customer. If you think about luxury, of course this doesn't work, because in luxury you want to talk to a human being, you don't want to talk to a computer. But what if that human being is equipped with this tool and helps it to be so much more efficient, to give a better service, a faster service and a better service? Then you have 2 paradigm changes here. A, for the consumer it's still a human voice and not a computer. 2, you make it much more efficient. 3, you do not destroy the job, you just elevate the job to another level. So I think if you want to attack the luxury industry, that's how you have to imagine it, as intermediary between the consumer and the, as an elevation of the job of the humans in the store. I mean, they can have something in the ear, even a sales staff in the store, where the system tells them, hey, this is customer so-and-so, he purchased this and this before, and then when the customer starts to talk and ask about something, you get the answer right away, etc., etc. So think about way to, so it's not the human elevating the computer, it's the computer elevating the human.
I think so.
Intelligence.
Yes.
There's
Customer
Augment the intelligence of the person who deals with the customer.
That's the use case, the very first actually use case that we have with one of our consumer retail partners. Exactly, they're using it on the back office to augment the intelligence of their agents, and it's a no-brainer, right? It's like people like to call it Copilot anywhere, blah blah, but the bottom line is they were putting up with a stupid search bar that was keyword based and had no understanding, and now they can talk to an AI that helps them save time, be more personalized, be smarter, more intelligent, and that's as real as it gets.
It cuts down on training time too, because it gets them into the job very quickly, and they've got a source to get the answer as opposed to having to train and remember or memorize everything.
And the product range changes every day. There's a new défilé, there's a new show, so they have to learn it. The customer calls and says, hey, I would like to buy that dress which was in the last Paris Match magazine. And the girl is in the phone and said, okay, let me see, where's the Paris Match magazine? Which one was it? Oh, I mean, all that can be super simplified in a system like that.
How many agents do you have on the phone calls that
Who
people
you?
at your company.
At LVMH.
I mean,
There are tens of thousands, I guess.
yeah, so that, and how seasonal are they? Are they always up?
Depends on the business. If it's fashion, it's very seasonal. If it's watch and jewelry, it's much less seasonal. It depends on the business. I mean, every brand has its own system, but there are lots of people.
Yeah, so that's the thing, with the
Yeah.
churn and all of that, it's exactly very practical. So, Erwan, I guess you got another luxury retail application of AI to consider.
Yeah, I think the fascinating thing, Philippe, is your answer of the augmentation of the sales agent in a big box retailer augments the associate so that he doesn't and she doesn't have to do the mundane, which is why they churn off of their jobs. It has a mechanism, one around service and the other around associate productivity, but yours is associate effectiveness. And so it is the same coin with two faces on the exact same thing. I had never thought of it in luxury because I thought, would they actually wear an earwig? In a Walmart store, it's absolute. Because it's part of the job. It's like, I want to stop doing dumb things. I don't want to walk to the back room and realize there's nothing there. I want the prompt to tell me, go to the back room on, aisle
Whatever,
1660 and pick up the milk and move it out. And then it makes sense, but yours, that's a use case that is, I look like a super salesperson. Yeah, I love it.
Or a customer service person that doesn't piss off a good customer.
Yeah. I was thinking computer vision on that
You
one, but
could-
you're right. You're right.
If I would be in your shoes and I would sell this to a luxury company, I would say, look, that allows you to have your salespeople focus on the relationship part, on all these things,
The human
rather than have endless trainings on the latest shoe collection which came out, the latest belt collection, the latest whatever. I mean, I think there's a selling pitch which you can build on that
Yes,
in
I
terms
like
of elevating, because it's not about cost,
that.
but it's about service quality. And you elevate the service quality, and that generates much more profit than if you cut the cost by a few percent.
Yes, it does.
And you make the salesperson more involved and more
Yes.
loyal and more engaged.
Yeah,
Yeah. Everybody wins.
Any other questions? What's your name?
David.
Repeat again.
David Farr.
David.
same David.
Dave Davis.
So 30 years ago, we were having these conversations about the internet. Same conversations. In fact, in 1996, I saw a guy named John Doerr, who's
Yeah.
arguably the greatest
AP, yeah.
venture capitalist of all time, in front of the room say, if you think that the PC revolution of the 80s changed our world, this thing called the internet, on steroids, right? 100-fold. And of course, I sat there and said, sure. I can't even get my dial-up line to AOL work. How do you compare? How do you compare this evolution, and what we're going to see over the next 10 or 15 or 20 years in the way we do business and the way we have social interactions? And the way, is it going to change our world as much as the internet did in the last 25 to 30 years?
Huge.
Back in 2000, when the internet was coming out, the NACD's national board organization said that less than 1/3 of boards took up the topic of internet and e-commerce, less than 1/3. And they reported that 85% of boards took up the question of AI at the board in the fourth quarter of last year.
Yep.
So boards got a whole lot smarter, because when 1/3 of them were thinking about the internet, and that's why I think the come on of the internet was slower. But once it got here, it started to just verticalize everything. Energy is different, retail is different, etc. Here, I think it just comes on and just hits every single one. Because not that boards are the most important things in companies, but they can exert a level of pressure on the senior staffs in a way that requires response and therefore resources and therefore thought leadership. And I don't know how
So I
you see
think
it from a
boards, the risk that a board sees, and opportunity, by the way, but the risk that a board sees is that it can be a huge drain on dollars immediately. When a lot of people start to, think of use cases and then aren't doing it well. So A, it's a drain on resources, could be a potential drain on resources. And B, right on the heels of cyber, AI makes cyber, easier for a lot of thieves, and it makes it, it looks better. I mean, the signs that you look for in cyber to know that it's not legitimate, AI erased all of that, right, and made it look legitimate. So that is the other thing boards saw immediately, because the risk of having to a cyber attack, having to disclose a cyber attack, et cetera, all the time, effort, and money that costs, et cetera. And then regulation, because the threat of regulation is going to hit in a way that, and it's in current administration not easy to control at all. So those things the board recognized immediately that they had to get in front of. And so if some companies decided that we're going to take a pause and not let people use AI in our companies yet. Well, that was laughable because they were using it anyway. They weren't controlling that. And boards recognized that you really couldn't control people like that. So they knew that they had to get ahead of it in a way that they didn't know that the internet came in.
I mean, I'm just sorry to interrupt, but just anecdotally, this reminds me of when the view about should a CEO use email. Jack Welch of GE at that time was always emailing and doing stuff like that, and forget about Twitter, but emailing, and his board did not they wanted somebody else to email for his name. Now, how laughable is that today? But it's the same thing what you're saying about this AI. The board does control that kind of decision making on something that we know now. Email has been amazing, and texting.
I asked somebody, are you ever going to use AI? And they're like, I'm never going to use AI in my life. And I said, get your iPhone out. I said, how is it that you think your face opening the phone is, well, it's not with AI. Oh my goodness. And I said, let's just do a Google search here. And so they're like, oh my gosh, I'm using AI. And so it is inevitable that it's going to work into so many things that people may not even recognize, where internet is easy to recognize. You are on the internet. And this, I think, there's an under the skin component to it. That's why I think it could be just massively.
It's also quietly been around for so long.
In
that
retail.
People were using it and didn't realize it was being used. They were using it, or that others were using it on them.
Can I plug something for the company here?
Yeah.
Go right ahead.
As an investor, so, okay, sorry. What is unique for me about Vernique is that it doesn't need all this huge LLM. Every company out there, which is the belly of our economy, it's like 70% of it, they all have their clients. They got their numbers. They got a lot of data. They don't need LLM with a lot of hallucination afterwards to deal with it. So
I think, can I just reiterate the point of the question of, will big, huge tech with these huge, giant ChatGPT 7s that will eventually come capture the market with so much data ingested, or is it going to be more verticalized on smaller markets that are more easily controlled?
domain specific.
And even the data that is yours be owned in the model. I think this thing got debated on every single stage that I was at. And so Vernique, I'm a Google advisor. The reason that I'm fascinated with Vernique is it's moving very fast in a domain that I understand, vertically. And Google is looking at it horizontally, every single industry on all of that. So it's still a question. No matter if we think that there's a good answer that we want to do, it is a competition, a competing effort, but as an investor, you have put your money down on the one that you think is gonna
But I
work.
mean, the
I love
reason bottom line is that if LV Match wants to get into this business, doesn't need a lot of information from outside.
No, it makes sense.
Inside, they got
for-
so much they don't even know they've got it. Bottom line. When you start looking into it, you got more product than I actually can cover. You don't need LLM. I mean, for this. You need it for boiling the ocean, fine, let them do it. You don't have the money to do it.
So to try to answer your question, going back to your question just on my little coverage of luxury, I remember a time when 10 years ago, some luxury manager said, I will never sell online. Famous last words. And actually, some still refuse to sell some of their products, Chanel typically, online. But at the end of the day, you know, Nike has, I think, 11 or 12 mottos, and one of it is the consumer decides. And at the end of the day, if the consumer wants to have a better experience with some of the brands where she's shopping, then that will force the change. So for me, you know, in my space, we've heard a lot about NFTs and metaverse, and you know, that was I had a lot of people from the media approaching us to say, hey, you know, what do you think about this? And that was all everyone was talking about, and it completely disappeared.
Yeah.
I don't think this will disappear because everyone's using it, to your point.
Because
And
there's
everyone
scientific
understands.
backing for it, honestly, that's why.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, and it's the accessibility to everyone. And I think that piece, and don't worry about Chanel because Nordstrom put them online like crazy. And, right? And so the consumer has a way.
Yeah. And if the consumer wants it, it'll happen in one way or another.
Yeah. Fascinating. And then we.
Just keep asking. I think we can keep asking. I love the language. Every single person in this room has been handpicked. Every single one of you, and you know that. There's a reason you're in this room, so we would love to hear your thoughts, comments, questions, reactions. So with and without the panel, it's up to you. You want to, if you're hungry and you want to sit, you should keep going.
One question.
One last.
Because Janet had a really good question about, does a retailer build their own, or do you buy it from a service, or do you go to the big guy? Did I say that right? Yeah.
I have different technologies I use globally, so I don't want to necessarily use one that's associated with one technology. So I like to use the same kind of thing across the globe. And so of course, I'll be speaking with you and I'll be looking at it.
Because you think of the complexity.
Well, you know, it's interesting. It's not theoretically how much complexity is there. You're asking questions about order adjustments, so there's not. We're going to look at what the different partners can provide.
Yeah.
If someone starts to ask styling questions, well, for me, just met you. I don't know. Will you be able to really do that? So this is
I
where
see.
this is the kind
So
of
things that are unique.
yeah. So that's the balance.
And I think it's,
I'm sorry.
okay. I think it's also a question of corporate culture. So again, in my little vertical of luxury, you have, I think, a French way of approaching luxury and an Italian way. I'm not talking American, it's just European way. And the Italian way is very pragmatic, and we work with a lot of third-party distributors, and we accept to be on multi-brand websites and blah, blah, blah. And the French way is completely controlled, right? And so everything's at home. Vuitton produces everything for Vuitton, no third-party producer. Vuitton distributes itself, no wholesale partner. And so with that sort of control-freak mentality of the French way of running luxury, I think they will want to, and again, margins are not an issue, they will want to spend whatever is needed to internalize everything, or at least to ensure that the consumer thinks that 100% is from them, not from any.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sorry. What's your name again? Philippe.
Tonight.
Philippe. I thought you said it so well. I think there's in the luxury space, and you know, we're on the edge of luxury. We sort of sit there with some of our brands being luxury, others not. Augmenting the stylist and the associate and elevating that is definitely key to it. There's big difference. I had a conversation with them today about what's the difference between marketing and clientele. What we do in luxury stores is clientele. So if you can give your associates the tools, they know their customers, but you've got, I'll make this up, for one associate, you've got however many hundreds of your customers. What do they buy? You don't have to remember that. And then as well, like in Europe, our marketing teams, they put together portfolios that say, these are the products that, and then you get a list against those products. So a human can't do that. So, Felipe, your point was so well articulated about how this can really play in luxury, and I still think that a lot of luxury players aren't necessarily thinking about it, but it's a massive unlock. A massive.
There is another aspect maybe I can add to that, and it goes back to what you just said and what Aaron said earlier on about the very big difficulty of luxury brands to anticipate demands in terms of size and colors and positionings, etc., etc. And if you do what you showed there in these examples, it means that, today luxury brands have all the data points about what has been sold in stores. They know it by the second. They don't need any AI for that.
Yeah.
They know that 5 minutes ago, throughout the world, we sold X bells of this. That's easy. But what this interaction with the customers provide you is new data points of knowing what did the customer ask for which we didn't have, or what they're expecting, etc. So if there is a way that could be a byproduct of such a tool, as a byproduct you also find ways to use that data to go beyond here are our sales statistics towards, here are trends of what customers seem to be looking for and not getting, or seem not to be interested in anymore, or seem to want to return or whatever, then you have a byproduct of this, which could be very valuable if it's done the right way.
Totally, and by the way, we call that technically like the proactive nature of AI. Like even our other company, our AI starts collecting data. You're saying you have the data, but then after it collects enough data, it starts anticipating needs before they are articulated. It starts projecting into the future before the future exists. So that's a natural way of making progression in general on the technology side, and of course on the business side.
Nazir, can I just also say, sitting in the room are some mask guys. Is Nike here?
No, unfortunately.
Gap, Nordstrom's, American Express, and interesting,
And Lowe's, Colleen is on Lowe's board.
Yeah, BJ's, from a wholesaler's point of view, Lowe's, it's, when you actually just look across some of these, what are the unique pieces that you keep inside that are unique? I think the fascinating thing about retail is there's parts of the business that are going to develop capabilities that are going to start to enable other whole parts of the map. Either it'll be done in luxury and used in a different place or not. I just don't think it's going to develop luxury and big box. I think it's going to be highly complex capabilities, whether you're selling Fram oil filters, and there's 10,000 of them, or probably only 5,000, or you're selling 50 to 100,000 different SKUs on all of that. I want to eat, and so I was just thinking, if I toss that one into the room, how do the retailers think about it? I'm curious how they think it will evolve.
Amazing.